It's official, a Gophers men's player has officially hit the transfer portal, and it's time to take back the nonsense against this women's basketball team, why they are just fine and moving and grooving on the WNIT.
Hey,
you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
What is up, y'all? You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're talking about the Gophers losing Josh Ola-Joseph to the transfer portal, what it means, did we expect it, and how to look at that situation moving forward. Then we got to talk some women's basketball, because respect to them getting back on track, getting their players healthy, and you see a night and day difference between these two teams. The media out here, some of y'all were going way too crazy, talking some nonsense like it's time to worry, it's time to be scared. No, Coach Don Plitzwhite has this squad ready to go, year one, moving and grooving. And yes, there were some falters in the injuries, but in the long scheme of things, this team is in a good spot and could be dangerous down the stretch. And then finally, we're going to talk about their next opponent in the WNIT, the NDSU Bison. And guess what? It should be one the Gophers pull away. They've already played this team before, and I'm going to dive into the details of all that on today's show. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show. If you love Gophers daily content, be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube or follow wherever you get the podcast at Locked On Golden Gophers, and leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. Now let's dive in first to this transfer portal news. Josh Ola-Joseph, the sophomore, is officially hitting the transfer portal, away from the Gophers, away from Ben Johnson, and trying to find a new home. But you know what? It wasn't completely unforeseen, because you're talking about a guy who played started 42 consecutive games for the Gophers from his freshman year and through the early parts of his sophomore year. And then all of a sudden you hit February of 2024 and this man can't buy a minute. I'm talking, this dude had under double-digit minutes in all of the games from February on. And I just don't understand it. It just doesn't make sense. How do you go from having a guy start 42 consecutive games and seeing the upside and seeing the athleticism and seeing the potential to not letting him get even 10 minutes in a game from February or March of his sophomore year? Definitely baffling, but that's why it wasn't surprising that he hit the transfer portal. So before I dive into any of that, I do want to say I wish Josh Ola-Joseph nothing but the best. I hope he finds a great home. I know that he will have offers in this transfer portal, so I have nothing but the best wishes for him, and hopefully he finds a squad that really utilizes his talent. And yes, he might have bits of rawness to his game, but the upside is tremendous. Now, when you're looking at Josh Ola-Joseph over the past 2 seasons, you're talking about a player who, again, started 42 games. But if you look at this season even, he was averaging 15 minutes a game when it all was said and done, because Coach Ben Johnson definitely didn't let him play that much in the back half. In the front half of the season, he was seeing about 22, 19, 22, 20, 23, 27, 19, 22. Those are all different minutes in his games in the early parts of this year, and it ended up averaging to about 15 minutes per game. Now, in those 15 minutes per game, he was averaging 7.5 points. That is not bad, especially when you take into account the vast drop-off in the minute production. If he stayed at his starter pace, if he stayed at that 20 to 25 minutes a game, he was probably averaging close to 10 points a game or better if he finished the whole season on that trend. So it's definitely a curious case with the Gophers and how this all played out. Now, yes, Parker Fox needed to get on the floor more, and he ended up kind of eating into Josh Ola-Joseph minutes. But my biggest question for Ben Johnson is, why not find minutes for both? Because at the very worst, at minimum, I think Josh Ola-Joseph could play the Parker Fox role greatly. in the future. I think he could be that at a minimum. That could be the floor of his upside with the Gophers program. And then at his high side, you see an athletic freak. You see a two-way player. You see a guy who has length, who can alley-oop and has that connection with Elijah Hawkins, who could have built a connection with Isaac Azuma. I'm telling you, there was so much upside with Josh Ola-Joseph, and if he could develop a more consistent jump shot, he'd be a threat from anywhere on the floor. Now, he showed over the offseason, he worked on his jumper, and he showed more of that in the beginning stages of the season, more confidence. He knocked down some more shots. So overall, you could see his game improving, but what was going on behind the scenes? That has to be the biggest question in this situation, because everybody wants to know why his minutes fell off. It's not just because he hit the transfer portal. People have been asking this since February. Why is Josh Ola-Joseph not playing anymore? Why isn't he getting ticked? And that is a phenomenal question that I don't have the answer to right now. I was thinking maybe he just wasn't cutting it against the Big Ten competition. But if you look at his Big Ten games against Ohio State in December, he had 7 points, 4 rebounds. Not terrible, not amazing. You go to the Nebraska game where Minnesota makes a comeback. He was a big part of that comeback. I remember his crazy rebounding. I remember his fire, his tenacity. I remember him dropping 15 points, 5 rebounds. I believe he had a block in that game as well. He was a big factor in that Nebraska matchup and why Minnesota was able to come back. You look at the Michigan game, 12 points, 3 rebounds. The Maryland game, 10 points. The IU game, 12 points, 5 rebounds. The first Iowa game, 15 points, 2 rebounds. All these games, he's getting double-digit points. He's having big efforts. Now, he did struggle after that a little bit. Michigan State, 4 points. Wisconsin, 2 points. But in the Wisconsin game, he only got 5 minutes. So it really begs the question, what went wrong? Because then you go to the Penn State game, 14 points, 5 rebounds. And that was the final Big Ten game in which he got more than 10 minutes. So what happened? Why did he just fall off a cliff when it came to his usage and his production? That's the biggest question I have for Ben Johnson. Hopefully we'll get the opportunity to ask that, but unfortunately, with the Gopher season being done, there probably won't be much opportunity for the media to connect with Coach Ben Johnson, and thus we won't be able to ask him any questions related to the matter. And once we are able to ask those questions, it probably will be either long enough that it just doesn't matter anymore, or he could avoid it by saying we only talk about players in the program. So overall, I never think we're going to get those answers unless Josh Ola-Joseph comes out and says something about why he wasn't getting ticked or what was happening behind the scenes, but I doubt that happens as well. So overall, right now, we just know Josh Ola-Joseph is no longer playing with the Minnesota Gophers moving forward. Now, in his games this season, in the games that he was able to play, he had 13 games with double-digit scoring, so it's not like he was ineffective. He has a lot of upside. He has a lot of potential, and I would not be surprised to see him get high major offers because of his athleticism alone, because of his length, because he can create on the defensive end and be a problem. And then you talk about his ability to drive, his ability to cut to the basket, his ability to finish at the rim. Look, he's going to get some major offers, and I just wish nothing but the best. I hope he thrives, and I hope this is one that we kind of regret getting away. But in the end, hopefully he has a great season. Hopefully the Gophers still have the opportunities to fill this team out and have a great shot at a run. Now, I think a lot of fans were starting to kind of assume this was going to happen, and we're assuming he probably wouldn't be on the roster next year anyway. So the Gophers are still turning their eyes towards Cam Christie, towards Dawson Garcia, and focusing on making sure they're staying. If they stay, that is huge for the Gophers. Elijah Hawkins, Mike Mitchell Jr., Pharrell Payne, along with those two, and hopefully Braden Carrington, you've got a core of 6 players, Isaac Azuma coming in, Grayson Grove coming in, and then you turn your eyes to the transfer portal. Now, the Gophers have a transfer portal visit this weekend. We will talk about him on tomorrow's show, so hopefully you'll tap in there. But I want to get over to our women's basketball team because, you know, some of the media were writing them off, and it is time to cut that nonsense out. They came out with authority in their WNIT game, and I don't care about the matchup. I don't care about how much they win. I care about what we saw on the court, and it was a night and day difference. That's what we're talking about coming up next. Now, first, we got to talk about our friends over at the best way to do daily fantasy. That is the new app, Better Together. It is the first cooperative daily fantasy application called Better Together because we all are better together. Now, it offers a familiar experience of existing DFS players with a social twist. You can play with friends or a teammate. And it is a way to stay connected with your friends. When gone are the days of watching sports together in person, but you can put your group chat to the test and prove that yours is the best. So you don't have to worry about if your bracket's already busted. If you're tired of the same old daily fantasy grind where you make a roster, you cross your fingers and you hope for the best. Now you can go and work together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs and talent. You can play with your friends and not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats and strategize with your partner to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the new social DFS movement. Now, Better Together is super fun. Definitely give it a try, and that is BETTOR. Download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Now, remember, the code is Locked On because winning alone is fun, but it is better together. And while we're at it, let's talk about our friends over at Fire TV with Amazon Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination, the place to be when it comes to sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers you an amazing viewing experience with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick. And you can plug that into your existing TV and it provides you access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. And you can also check out their Fire TV channels, which deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And you can even find us over at Locked On, as well as most of the big pro leagues and college conferences. So Fire TV channels, it let you dive into the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up with the latest world of sports. Check out the Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, it is time. It's past due. You should definitely do that. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, Gopher fans, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can find Locked On Minnesota Sports, where they have a 24/7 constantly streaming channel where you can find all of your latest Minnesota news, whether it's the Wild, whether it's the Vikings, who they're going to take at quarterback. You know it's going to be a quarterback, but who's it going to be? If you want to find all of that and more, the Ron Johnson Show, the Minnesota Football Party, all of that can be found over at Locked On Minnesota, and it is a 24/7 streaming channel as well. So you can catch these Gopher shows over there as well. If you've missed it over on the channel, definitely tap in. If you want to watch it live, if you want to watch different premiering episodes, you can find it over at our 24/7 streaming for Minnesota sports over at Locked On Minnesota Sports. Now let's dive in. Let's talk about the women's basketball team, because it was night and day difference when it came to their star players, their center and their Marbron, their star shooting guard, coming back and joining the team. Now, look, I think if the WBIT knew that those two players were going to be on hand for these tournament games, they would have taken the Gophers. They would have selected them because they bring quality basketball when they are healthy. And that is plain and simple and straightforward. You can see it clear as day. And that is why I was baffled when we had local media who clearly hadn't been to many games outside of the UConn game and the Iowa matchup with Caitlin Clark. Those were like the only matchups that some of our local media attended, and they made assumptions just from those two games. They looked at it and they said, you know what? They lost to these two all-tournament teams, these two, a 1 seed and a 3 seed, the most winning program in women's basketball in UConn, and the generational talent of Caitlin Clark. And the Gophers couldn't hang with them. In one of those games, they were missing 2 star players. The other one, they hung around for the first half, and even Coach Gino over at UConn gave them credit where credit is due with a very young team. But that's not what some of these local media people saw. They said it's time to be worried. It's time to be concerned. I don't care about the injuries. This is concerning in Coach Don Plitzwhite's first year, and that was hooey. That was laughable. That was downright dumb. And the Gophers are proving it now. I mean, they started out 14-5 on the season in their first 19 games, and they showed you the ability that they had, the talent that they had, that things were coming together. And that was in year one, while things were on the fly, while you're still incorporating lots of things on the fly and hoping that it sticks. Now you have a group that has postseason play experience, that has a year under their belts in the system. And as they hit the offseason, they're going to be able to maintain and retain more information. Things are going to come by more instinctively. The game is going to start to slow down. And that's where this Gophers team can get dangerous. And you can already see it when they added back their 2 injured players for this playoff game. Now, yes, they were playing the Pacific Tigers, but the Pacific Tigers were 19-14. So they still won 19 games, almost 20 games on the season. And with that, the Gophers dominated that basketball game. They were up by 18, 20, 24 points throughout a majority of that game. And yes, towards the end, the Gophers went on a cold streak when it came to shooting, but overall, you saw what you needed to see from the Gophers women's basketball team in that it is a different team. They play different basketball and they adjust. They can switch things on the fly. They have different scoring threats, and that's what this team was missing throughout the back half of the season. Because when the 3 wasn't falling in the back half of the season, this Gophers team was doomed. But in this matchup, you saw when the 3 wasn't falling, you saw Amaya Battle, who has come into her own and is playing her best basketball since the Big Ten tournament, and she still maintained that confidence, that swagger, that attack. She was able to threaten on the inside. Sophie Hart was a beast on the inside and adds a different level of interior scoring for this Gophers team. Mara Braun adds another threat. So when you have someone or you have a defense focusing on trying to take away Mara Braun or trying to take away Amaya Battle, then you can go to Sophie on the inside, and that is another threat. And then when they try to double down on Sophie on the inside because she's attacking, she started 5 for 5 in the game. All of a sudden, you got to bring some help on her on the interior. It frees up your 3-point shooters, and they're able to find more open shots. Now, when you're looking at yesterday's game, Mallory Heyer started hitting some more threes. Now, the Gophers didn't shoot great from 3-pointer overall, but they were able to adjust, and they were able to get more openings with those 2 additions back on the floor. Now you add that together, those starting 5 have been playing well when they're on the floor together, but now you have Ania Holloway as well, who is playing with full confidence. You can tell she fully trusts that knee, and it makes sense because she's back. It's been over a year now, just over a year, I believe, since she injured that knee. So she has been able to really test it out to its fullest throughout the whole season. But you saw since the Big Ten tournament, something flipped a switch. Her aggressiveness, her grittiness, her willingness to dive on the floor, to get scrappy against other teams. It is night and day, and it makes her a very, very great rotational player for this Gophers team moving forward. So you've got her playing with confidence. You've got your starters moving and grooving. You've got different ways to attack on the inside and the outside. Like I said, the Gophers shot poorly from both deep and the free throw line. That's not normal. They don't usually shoot poorly from the free throw line. They shot 11 of 22 from the free throw line, and they also shot, I believe, like 6 of 22 from deep. Those 2 things don't typically happen, and even when they did, they still led this game by almost 20 points or more the entire game and won by a healthy margin to finish off this matchup. So overall, you saw how different this team is. You saw the upside of this team, and it's still a very young team, the youngest in the Big Ten Conference. So I am over the dramatics, the theatrics, the worry of this Gophers women's basketball team, and I am looking forward to how they carry throughout the rest of this WNIT, because what I will tell you is that this Gophers team definitely has the ability to win the whole dang thing. And I think it's going to come to fruition. You're going to see more of that element, more of that upside in this matchup on Friday against the North Dakota State Bison. Now, they've played this team before, and it's why I believe they're going to do even better against the Bison in this next matchup. But the biggest thing that was most impressive from Coach Don Plitzwhite in this last matchup that we haven't even really seen through that first 19 games before the injuries was the depth that Dawn went to on her bench. She played 8 players in a rotation that all saw 18 or more minutes. Now, that was a positive because you're keeping players fresh. You're getting confidence going. You got meaningful contributions from Janae Sanders off the bench, from Maggie Zanano off the bench. And that is what helps this Gophers team continue to develop and flourish and helps get your players fresh and keep them fresh throughout the game. I loved that element in that game, and I think it was an important factor. And then, like I said, Sophie Hart was a force and a presence on the inside. She was a plus 23 on the night, which is impressive in its own right. And she started off 5 for 5 from the floor. Her presence, she brings something that nobody on this Gophers team can bring. Now, Ayanna Johnson has shown flickers of that post-game inside, but it is not the same as what we see with Sophie Hart. So having her on this roster and healthy is a huge thing for the Gophers, and hopefully they can maybe find some depth behind her as well for next season to help this team go even further. But what I saw from this team in the times where they've been healthy, both yesterday and in the beginning of the season, was that they can have the talent and the upside to be a tournament team. And with more experience and more understanding and more time in this system, they could be a danger in the Big Ten. We're going to find out next year and the year after for sure, but definitely we've got to find out more in this WNIT, where they're moving on to the quarterfinals to play North Dakota State, which is here. And I'm going to tell you more about that matchup coming up next. First, let's talk to you about our friends over at Nissan, because March Madness Brackets highlights are brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that pushed it further than the rest, just like the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These teams were able to take it to the next level, and we got to talk about the North Carolina Tar Heels, that perfect, beautiful blue that they are rocking. They also were rocking on the basketball courts, and they can only be described as the Nissan Armada. This one seed is as hardcore as it gets out there, so it's no wonder that they are on their way to the Sweet 16 this Thursday against Alabama in the NCAA tournament. They're a favorite picked by many to run to the championship, and I think it's possible they can get it done. Now, if they get past the Alabama Crimson Tide, then you could be looking at a rematch or revenge game. North Carolina versus one of their star players and Caleb Love of the Arizona Wildcats. Everybody wants to see that one. But regardless, your Armada is tough, and so are the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, you can take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Again, that's NissanUSA.com. And while we're talking about the vehicles, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy, and it keeps your vehicle alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. So when you're whipping around in your new Nissan Rogue, you can definitely add things like the superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered, and they have over 122 million parts for your vehicle that you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And if it doesn't fit, you get it and you're like, man, it didn't fit my vehicle. Well, guess what? You get your money back. That's right. They have the guaranteed fit, guaranteed every part to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the dub. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay guaranteed fit is for U.S. customers only. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping this one up by talking about the WNIT third round matchup the Gophers have versus the North Dakota State Bison, and that is coming up this Friday, and it's going to be in Dinkytown. Now, I saw some criticism from some North Dakota State fans talking about, oh, well, we would have more fans show up at our place if they would go here, blah, blah, blah. Look, earn it then. Go get you a better seed, go get you a better record, and why don't you get a dub? I mean, I'm not here to talk trash, but like, the cities is a hub for women's basketball, and we have shown that left and right, from the different games that the Gophers have played to the women's basketball tournament that has been here for the Big Ten for the past 2 years and sold out an all-time record this year. And then on top of that, when the Final Four was here, they have shown time and time again that Minneapolis is the place to be when it comes to women's basketball, and that's why it's a great spot to host this WNIT third round game. Now, North Dakota State, they really haven't beaten any high major teams or big teams that are impressive on their schedule. When I look at their schedule right now, I pull it up right here, and they lost to Creighton, they lost to Minnesota, they lost to Drake, they lost to Iowa State, they lost to Montana State, but their wins aren't against top-notch teams. So overall, that isn't anything that scares me from this North Dakota State team. On top of that, when they were healthy, they played Minnesota. Now, they played here in Minnesota, and they lost big time. In fact, they lost 75-53. That's a 22-point deficit that Minnesota beat them by the last time they played earlier this season. Now, that game was in November, so that was one of the first games of the season, but the Gophers showed that they can absolutely dominate this North Dakota State team, and I expect domination from Gophers moving forward. I don't care that the players are just coming back from injuries. We've seen that they can come back well. But on top of that, this is a team that the Gophers are facing for the second time, and Coach Dawn Plitzwhite is great at drawing up game plans, especially when she has her full roster. So I think that she is going to have things ready for this North Dakota State team to give them troubles. And that is why I feel very, very confident about this Friday matchup. Now I'm excited to attend. I'm excited to cover this game. And when you look at this North Dakota State team, like I said, yes, they came away with some big wins. They finished 22-11 so far on the season, but overall, they haven't really played anyone. And on top of that, when they played the Gophers last time, Amaya Battle went crazy, gave them fits, and dropped 20 points on them in the last matchup. And that was a different Amaya Battle. That was not the Amaya Battle we've been seeing for the last few weeks now, playing at her all-time best, playing with all-time confidence, and scoring at all three levels. If that Amaya Battle shows up, look, I don't know if she's going to give North Dakota State a 50 ball or what's going to happen there, but overall, I have a lot of confidence, and it also takes the pressure off of Mara Braun, who's coming back from injury, because Amaya Battle can attack and have her way with this team. And if they want to scheme and try to take her away, it should open up other opportunities for Mara, for Grace, for Mallory, and on the inside with Sophie. So overall, having a healthy team is going to help this Minnesota team not only hopefully dominate this game, but give them the opportunity to go even further, make it to the semifinals for this WNIT tournament, and give them a shot to win the whole dang thing. Now, I believe if they get this win, it will be the final game at the barn for the Dinkytown and the Minnesota Golden Gophers, because I believe the semifinals go on to a more neutral playing field. So we'll see what happens there, but that's why it gives you even more reason to pack the barn this Friday. Not only to prove the North Dakota analysts and whatnot wrong that they would sell out better, because I don't think that's happening, but two, because it could be your final chance to see Gophers basketball live and in person here in the 2024 spring. So definitely check it out. Get your tickets. It's this Friday. Again, I believe it's at 7 o'clock. We're going to pack the barn. We're going to go crazy for the women's basketball team and help usher them hopefully into the semifinals. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of Locked On Golden Gophers. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you're having a good time. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of your daily Gophers content moving forward. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit of football. We're also going to talk about the basketball visit that we have coming with a North Dakota State Bison, by the way, who might want to move on from Fargo and head over to Minnesota. We'll see what happens there, but we'll cover that on tomorrow's show. I'll see you then. Row the boat, Sky My Go Gophers, as always, and don't forget to hit subscribe.